Today's date is July the 11th, 2024. My name is Crispin Brooks. I'm today interviewing on behalf of the USC Shoah Foundation, Deborah Brenner. The interview is taking place in Woodland Hills, California, United States of America, and the language of the interview will be English. Please state your name.
Deborah Brenner.
Did you ever have any other names, like your name at birth?
I remember Deborah, just Brenner.
And last name?
Korolchuk.
And what did people call you growing up as a little girl?
Deborah.
Any nicknames?
Not that I recall. I'm sure you'll find some.
And was there any special significance or meaning to your name, why you were called Deborah? Were you named after anyone?
Well, I think I may have been named after some relative. I don't remember, maybe a couple, I don't remember.
And when were you born?
December 25, 37.
And where were you born?
In Ostrov Mazowiecki.
And what country was that?
That's Poland.
And who was your father?
Mania Korolchuk.
And what are your memories of him?
I think he's a wonderful person. He's very loving. I think he was very bright, very brilliant. He had a sense of humor. He was just a wonderful, wonderful uncle, a father rather.
And what did he look like?
He was tall. He had dark hair, dark eyes, a kind of dark complexion. I thought he was very handsome.
And how about your mother? What was her name?
Her name was Leah Friedman Korolchuk.
And what do you remember of her? How would you describe her?
She was small. She was very smart. She was very highly educated, very intelligent person. Funny. She was very kind. I think she was very extraordinary.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have a sister. Her name was Celia Drillman.
And how would you describe her?
She was attractive. She was smart. I think a little bit conceited, maybe. And she didn't approve of me because whenever she was walking with friends, I used to follow her. She did not appreciate it at all. She used to say, "Shoo, get away from me." I liked to follow her. After all, she was very sophisticated. She was very conceited, maybe a little.
And she was older or younger than you?
She was older.
Do you know how much older?
I'm not sure. I'm guessing maybe 9 years. I'm not too sure.
But a big age gap between
Yes,
you.
yes.
And do you know why it was such a big age gap between you?
I have no idea.
And do you remember any grandparents?
Yes. My grandfather and my grandmother.
And which side of the family do you remember? What were their names?
My mind is a blank. It shouldn't be, but it is. So long ago.
What pictures come to your mind when you think of them?
Well, I thought he was very smart. He was intelligent. I think he was educated. He was a bit severe, I thought.
Which was this on the dad's side or your mum's side?
Maybe my mother, but I'm not sure.
And grandmothers?
My grandmother, yeah. Yeah, I remember her. She was very nice. She was kind. She had a sense of humor. She was dark. She had dark eyes, dark hair. She was very impressive. She was nice.
And you remember conversations with her or playing with her, her playing with you?
She played with me a little. I think she was very busy. She had other people in her life, and but I used to get attention from her. She was smart. She was very smart. She was intelligent and educated.
And other relatives, do you remember aunts, uncles, cousins, things like that?
Yeah, I remember my Aunt Esther, my mother's sister. Her name was Esther. I remember her. I think she had a sister, Ita. I think she had a sister also, Huma.
It's a big family.
Yeah.
And on the dad's side, were there uncles and cousins?
Yeah, my father had a brother, Itzhak. Yeah, that was his brother. I knew him well. And my memory goes blank a little. I just remember Itzhak. We call him Itche. I don't remember many more at this point. It's been a long time.
For sure. And what do you remember about in Ostrov Mazowiecki?
I remember there was a garden full of flowers. I used to like to walk there, and I guess I used to fall asleep there because I remember waking up in my bed in the bedroom. I used to walk and look at the flowers. It was a beautiful place. I loved being there. My father used to find me somewhere in the garden. Next thing I know, I was in bed. I liked the place. I loved it. There's so many flowers. You could just walk and walk. It was beautiful, very peaceful. My favorite place.
Do you have any memories of the house? Can you picture it?
I remember it was a big house and high ceilings, very high ceilings. And I remember mostly standing in the mirror and looking at myself. I was conceited. I think I was about 3 by the time. I think I was conceited. I liked to look at myself. I was a little, my parents were wonderful people. I had great parents. I used to look at my friends and say, poor kids, they don't have parents like I do.
And inside the house, was it dark or light?
It was light. I remember chandelier. I remember there was a mirror, which I was very fond of. I used to stand in front of it. I think I was a little conceited. I was 3. Whenever I wore a new dress or whatever, I checked myself out.
Did you have your own bedroom?
I don't remember. I think I must have, but I'm not sure. I think I must have. Not sure.
And in those really early days in Ostrov Mazowiecka, do you remember any sort of family meal times, anything like that?
Vaguely. I know I wasn't a good eater because I used to leave a lot of food kind, and my mother used to try to make me eat more. Yeah, my father too. He was not satisfied with my appetite. Not at all. My parents were wonderful. I used to say I'm sorry for my friends. They don't have parents like I do.
At home, did you have any people in the home, like a servant or a governess or anything like that? A maid?
I remember my uncle. He was a medical doctor. He was wonderful. I think I had a couple of aunts. Yes.
And what language did you speak at home?
Good question. I know Yiddish was spoken. I also spoke Polish, maybe a little Russian too. I think I spoke a couple of languages.
And at home, do you remember any of the furniture? A clock or a...
I remember I had a grandfather clock. I also remember a mirror because I was very conceited and looked at it all myself all the time.
What do you remember about the grandfather clock?
It made a beautiful sound. It was so pretty. I loved my clock. I think it was my favorite piece of furniture. It was beautiful. It was put together beautifully. I liked it a lot.
And in Ostrov, do you remember any holidays, any Jewish holidays, any Shabbat or anything like that?
I remember being dressed and going for a walk. It could have been Shabbat. I'm not sure what day. I do.
Was the family religious, do you think?
Yes. Not fanatic, but religious.
And do you have any idea sort of who your parents' friends were and who they socialized with?
I know they had friends. They were also close with the family, people. Yes. People were always coming and going.
And had your parents always been in Ostrov, or had they come from other parts and moved there, do you know?
I just remember Ostrov. I don't remember anything else.
And what was your father's job before the war?
I think he was a teacher. Oh, no, sorry. He was a businessman. They had a business.
Do you know what kind?
I think they had material clothing. It was a very good business, I remember. I used to go like to walk by and look at everything.
And you mentioned your mother was very educated.
Yes.
Can you tell me what do you know about that?
Well, she was a teacher. She taught. She was a teacher. My parents were teachers, both of them, my father too. And she spoke languages. She spoke a number of languages. I think they were very educated, both of them. My father was funny. He had a sense of humor.
Do you remember any stories or jokes he would tell?
No, because if it was one or two, I would have remembered. But he had a lot. I don't remember them. He was very funny. He was very entertaining. He was wonderful company. I think he had a wonderful personality. I adored him.
Do you know if either of your parents were interested in politics at all before the war, involved in any parties or anything
I
like that?
know they were very educated, well-read, and spoke among each other with all kinds of stories and politics and education, everything. It was always flowing.
And was there ever any talk of Zionism, of going to Palestine? Did any of family members leave or think about leaving, do you know?
I know they were always speaking, they were interested in politics in general, particularly, and they were interested in Israel, and they spoke a lot about politics in general. I thought they were very educated. I used to listen with my ears and just enjoy myself listening to them. They were very educated, I thought, and very knowledgeable.
And when you think back, what would you say are your very, very earliest memories?
Of my parents?
Or just any memories, whatever the earliest ones are.
Well, I remember I just loved my parents. I thought they were so special. I had an uncle that I adored. He was a medical doctor. I just loved him. He was an incredible person and very funny and very entertaining. I understand he took care of me when I got sick.
Is this Joseph?
That was Joseph, yes.
Joseph
Yes, the
Friedman?
uncle- Joseph Friedman,
Yeah.
yes. My Uncle Joseph, yes. Joseph Friedman is what they call him. He was a very wonderful person. I just loved him. I was sick one time. I don't remember how or what. And he took care of me, and he was wonderful to me. I loved him. I loved him. I had wonderful aunts and uncles, too. I had wonderful family, actually.
And you said you used to listen in to your parents talking about politics and having their discussions. Were you aware, or did they have any awareness of things going on in Germany and the approach of the war?
I think that they were very educated, well-read, and well aware of what's going on, their surroundings very well. I listened. I listened too much. And I was very curious, I think. I had to know what was going on. I think I was too busy listening. I would get chased away. Go play with your friends. What are you doing here? I just listened on everything that was said and done. I think I was a little busybody.
And when the Germans invaded in 1939, when you were still in Ostrov, what happened?
Oh, I just remember boots on the floor, something, an unfriendly atmosphere. I knew that everything was wrong, and I disliked what was going on. I hated the people. I hated the Germans. I just did. As soon as they came in their faces, I stared at them boots. I got very upset, I remember. I knew the atmosphere has changed. As they were called Deutschen.
And what happened next?
I remember we moved from Ostrov to another place, smaller place. And I guess in time my memory kind of fades.
How did you get to this other place?
I think a horse and buggy, I think, yes.
And
Yes.
who were you with?
I think I must have been with my mother. I'm not sure if my father was there. It's so long ago. I don't remember. I remember that things changed, not for good. Things were sad and austere. It became very different.
And when you got on the horse and buggy, what do you remember?
I just remember going through fields and looking at everything, the atmosphere. Yeah. I just felt things were sad. seemed to change.
Was there anything you were able to take with you, like any toys or anything special to you?
I think I had my doll with me. I don't know whether I took it or my parents brought it. I had a doll, my favorite doll.
What was her name?
I don't think I had a name for her, or don't remember. But basically I was never playing with dolls much.
What did you like to play with?
I was curious. I rummaged through things. I tried to find things that I was interested in that I was still playing with. I think it was a little bit busy and curious.
So you're on the horse and buggy and you're going east. Is this when you went to Zambrov?
Probably. Yeah. Was it Zamość? I don't remember anymore. It's a long time.
You were very young.
Yeah.
And when you got to that place, what do you remember?
I remember it was a house. I remember flowers. I used to rummage through the place and investigate it, and I guess I used to fall asleep after walking. And the next thing I knew, I was in bed in the house and in my bedroom. But I think I was very curious, and I was always investigating everything.
And along with your mother and sister in Zambrov, were there any other family members with you?
I had my uncle. He was a medical doctor. He took care of me. There were my aunts. And my uncle, especially my uncle, he was very wonderful. He took care of me. I remember I got sick with some kind of disease, and he took care of me for a very long time. My uncle was wonderful. I just loved him.
Did you have cousins with you there as well?
Jezus
and Lala?
Yeah, Jezus and Lalek, yes.
And what do you remember of them?
I think they were very nice to me. I loved them. I loved my cousins so much. Yeah, it was a nice family, beautiful.
And where was your father at this time? What was happening to him?
I think Papa was busy. He seemed to be in and out. I guess he had things to do. Maybe it was business. Oh yeah, he had a business, right? And he was taking care of the business. And there were people coming, I remember. It was a busy time. There were people coming and going. I loved it. I loved it.
And you said you weren't the best eater. Do you remember what you ate or what your parents wanted you to eat at this kind of time?
I remember they fed me. They didn't like my eating or not eating. They thought I was a bad eater. They used to call me a bad eater, to say the least. And my father tried to feed me. He was my feeder, and he didn't like it. He said I didn't eat enough, and I left all my food behind. Called me a bad eater. Oh, when he came with my food, I knew it was going to be tough. Because he called me certain names about my eating. Bad eater. He had certain names for me. He didn't like my eating habits, or lack of them. He called me names. Yeah, he was wonderful.
And in Zambrov, this was under the Soviets, right? Not the Germans.
Yeah, I think. Excuse me.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And how comfortable for your family was life under the Soviets?
I remember very little. I don't remember much. I know they were called Russians, and I knew things changed, but as far as my age is concerned, I adjusted, did whatever I could to play, and that was it.
Do you know if there was any danger for your father as a businessman?
I don't think, if I didn't know of such a thing. If there was, I wasn't aware.
And roughly how long were you in Zambrow before you moved again?
I don't remember. I have no memory at all. I remember being on a horse and buggy, and that's it. I don't remember.
And where did you go to next?
Don't remember. We settled somewhere. I just don't remember where. It's such a long time ago. I don't remember.
No, that's okay. Were you ever in Baranovich?
I was, yeah.
When you hear the name Baranovich, what does it make you think?
Well, I think that, different language. I had to learn to speak, Russian. And not much else. It's so long. I'm sure there's more I don't remember.
And was all the family with you there?
Yes.
And what do you remember about going to Snov?
Very little. I don't remember much about Snov.
Can you picture, when I say Snov, can you give me a picture of what it might have looked like?
I'm sure I remembered years ago. I don't anymore.
And were your grandparents with you, your dad's parents at
Uh-huh.
that time? This is Meyer and Fruma?
Yeah. My uncle, my aunt. Yeah.
And do you know, so it wasn't just your immediate family, there were more grandparents and aunts and uncles with you there?
Yeah. I remembered years ago, but I don't anymore.
It's okay. In Snov, did you ever wear a yellow star?
No, I was too young. I didn't wear yellow. My sister, I think, did. But I wasn't required.
And yeah. As a little girl, did people know you were Jewish if you were just walking around?
I was conscious of being Jewish, and I walked around and I spoke to whatever neighbors, people I knew, and they responded. And I felt everything was a little different, but still, able to cope with.
And the ghetto in Snov, what can you tell me about that?
I can't remember.
Were there guards?
I have no memory. I'm sorry.
It's okay. And was your father ever taken away for forced labor?
Papa was away a lot, but I don't remember how why. I thought he went to work to earn a living, I guess, but I have no memory any more than that. He was away, I knew, but I thought that's supposed to be as is.
And your mother stayed with you?
She stayed, yeah. And I had aunts, stayed. My mother had sisters. So I knew my aunts, and that was it.
Was there ever anyone else that took care of you, like a babysitter?
No, I know my uncle was very wonderful to me. I think I got sick. There was something going around, a disease, and he spent a lot of time taking care of me. He was a wonderful person. I adored him. He was wonderful. He was so special. I loved my uncle very much. I liked my aunts too. The family was wonderful I had. I was lucky.
And what did he do when he was taking care of you?
Well, he was a medical doctor, but when he was taking care of me, I think I was first in his attention. And he took care of me. He brought me around. I picked up something that was going around, and he spent a lot of time taking care of me. He was wonderful. I adored him. He was a wonderful person.
Do you, in these early years, do you remember any birthdays?
No, not particularly. No. I think I was celebrating my birthday with my parents, but I just don't remember incidentals.
And when you were in Snov in the ghetto, how were women treated there? When the men were away doing forced labor, how were the women treated?
I have no recollection. Really, I don't. No recollection. I knew things were changed, and I was tense, but I just don't remember anymore. Probably a few years ago, I would have remembered better than I do now.
There was a time when you had to hide.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I remember I had to hide, and with the family, their name was Rutkowski. And he was a wonderful person, and his wife was awful, and his kids were awful. They were anti-Semitic, so it wasn't a very pleasant time. He was wonderful. He used to say to me, of all my children, I like you the best. But he was a wonderful man. Him I loved. Ivan Rutkowski.
What did he look like?
He was a tall and handsome, educated. I think he was a teacher. And he was a wonderful person. He was very nice, wonderful. I loved him.
And how did you get to him?
I think he came to us when things turned bad, anti-Semitism and everything, and he stayed with us. I really liked him a lot. He was special.
And did he live in the town of Snov or in somewhere smaller?
I have no idea where he lived, but he spent a lot of time in our house, I remember. He was a very nice man. Ivan Rutkowski, he was nice.
In Snov, were you ever in contact with the mayor?
No, I had no contact with anyone, that was small, I guess.
And tell me about your relations with Ivan Rutkowski's his family.
His family was not a good family. They were all terrible. They were anti-Semitic. They called me Zhidovka, Jew, and they were very not good. They were not good.
So if they were anti-Semitic and he was trying to keep you, how did it work?
It didn't work very well because he would pick me up, he would caress my hair, He told me he loved me. He told me of all my children, I love you the best. He was a wonderful person. But the rest of them were rotten.
And how did you cope?
I just adjusted to whatever I had to adjust to. I couldn't do anything about it. I knew what was going on. I understood that he was a nice man. I knew his family stank, and that was it.
And your parents and sister had to leave you there?
They left me there, yeah.
Do you remember when you separated from them, when they left you?
I think almost immediately. Immediately. I hadn't seen him for a very long time before we came back together.
And how was that for you, being on your own like that?
Not good. I mean, he was wonderful, and his family was anti-Semitic, and they called me Żydówka, and that was what it was. It was awful.
And what did you understand about what was happening to you?
I knew that I was Jewish, and I was hated. It's very clear to me about that. They made it clear.
What did they say?
Żydówka, paszywa, Żydówka.
Did they ever threaten you?
Well, they didn't really hit me or anything, but they called me names. And they used to say things like, they used to play games, but they said, dressed in white, and they said my parents' ghosts, and they're all dead, and all kinds of miserable things. And I didn't believe it, I didn't buy it, and that was it.
And what clothes did you have to wear when you were with them?
The clothes I wore is when I came, I had clothes from my parents, and then they took them and they gave me some rags, and I wore those. They took off everything, even my shoes.
Do you need a drink of water?
I think I do. He was a very nice man. His wife was awful. He married her because she was rich. The house and the property, everything belonged to her. And he had to take whatever she gave him. He was really in a very bad situation. He was poor, he was educated, but he was poor, and he married this wife. And she was horrible. She was anti-Semitic. She was awful. She didn't even treat her children very well. It was an awful time. And he had to take it. He had no choice because she owned the house. There was, I think, 100-something property, acres. I forget already. And everything belonged to her. And he was in that situation. It was an awful situation for him. He was a very nice man. Married for money, and she was awful. She was a kind of a cripple. I remember I was very small, but I remember looking at her and thinking, everything on the body is in the wrong place. This is too high. I used to check her out every time I saw her. I said, it's not good. She was ugly. She was unpleasant. He married her because the house and the 100 acres of land and everything belonged to her. He married money and he got her with it.
And did she have any other family? Was her family around?
I don't recall actually any family around. I don't know whether they were there and I don't remember, or they weren't. I don't think they would. I would have remembered. I think there weren't any.
Did she? I thought she might have had a sister who married a Nazi.
She had a sister who married a Nazi, and I just don't remember I don't know. It wasn't good, but I just don't remember. It was not a good idea, the whole thing. Well, it was her property. It was 100 acres, I think, if I remember correctly, land. there was a lot of corn and so much growing there. And he married her.
And what was the house like when you were staying with the Rutkowski family? What was the house like that you were staying in?
Well, actually, I wasn't allowed too much in the house. He was away because whenever he came, they had a fight, physical, and he ran away. And she was awful. She treated me in a very bad manner. I heard Zhidovka all the time. I think she wasn't very normal. And all I remember, I was little, but I remember looking at her figure. I found everything was in the wrong place. I remember deciding this doesn't belong there, this doesn't belong here. And every time she yelled at me, I kept checking out her figure. I felt she was some kind of a cripple. I was very small, but I remember, I said, she's awful. Why did he marry her? I say. Then I would say the house, 100 acres of land, that's why.
Did you ever fall ill when you were with her?
Yeah, a lot of times. I wasn't taken care of very well. I just they stuck me in the kitchen or something, and that's it. I had to recover. Oh, if anybody came and brought me a little water or something, I had to fight to just pick myself up because nobody really gave a care.
And what did you have to eat at this time?
I was basically starving, a piece of bread when they remembered, water, but nobody really came around and did much. I got very, very thin, and I had a hard time getting back on my feet, I remember. Ivan Rutkowski, when he came home, the only thing is he wasn't home much because whenever he came home, they had a fight. He'd leave. And he used to say, I know you're suffering, I know you're suffering. And then he'd leave. Well, he wasn't responsible for me, I guess.
Where did he go?
I have no idea. Because they had a fight, fist fight. They fought physically. And then he just ran away. He couldn't stand being with her. So she got her hands on me. She was horrible. I remember I was very small, but I figured out that her figure was all in the wrong places. And I remember staring and saying, why is this here? Why is this there? And I used to say to myself, don't stare, leave it alone. But my eyes went, and again, this is in the wrong place, that is in the wrong place. I just couldn't help it. I lost a lot of weight. I got very skinny when I was with her. I was always hungry. I don't think she was normal. I remember thinking, why did he marry her? He was tall, he was very handsome, obviously educated. He seemed like a very nice man. She was thin, and she was small, and her figure was all wrong. I remember thinking, everything's in the wrong place. Even though I was small, I figured it out.
When you were there, was the house like a farm? You said there were fields.
It was a farm. It was the same farm. Yeah, it was a farm.
Did you have to do any jobs or work when you were there? Did they make you do things?
Well, yeah, I was working all the time. I was working all the time. They had 100 acres, I think, of land there, if I remember correctly. I think so.
And what did they make you do?
They would make me sweep. They would make me I carried a lot of weight of everything. I was very small, and they always loaded me up. Take this here, take this there. So I would pick up things. I could barely walk. But, well, why wouldn't they? They had a chance to do it, so they did it.
And do you know, were they paid to take you?
Yes, my parents paid my mother had gold coins on her, and she paid them quite well, and they always said it wasn't enough. Shidovka must have more money. There was never enough. Whatever she gave them out everything in the end. They were awful. They were dirt. He was a nice man. He really was a very nice man, Mr. Rutkowski. The rest were garbage. And I don't know why he married her. She was ugly too, I used to think.
Do you remember, were there any, you said how difficult it was for you and how badly you were treated when he was away.
Yeah.
Were there any happy times at all? Any moments during those times that were happy?
I don't remember them. If they were, I don't remember. No. No, the kids were awful. They hated me. All I heard was Shidovka here and there. They hit me too. He was awful. He was nice. He was very nice. He was a nice man.
Were there any animals around?
Yeah, a lot of animals. They had a lot of everything. They had a whole farm, and they had a lot of, the barn was full of different animals. There were horses. I didn't get along with the horses too well, but everything else I did well with the rest.
Which animals did you like?
I liked about everything there, aside from the horses. It wasn't that they were nice. They just seemed cold. They were cold. But everything else, everybody else was nice. It was nice.
Were there chickens?
Oh yeah, there was everything. There was pigs, there was chicken. It was a big farm, a lot of animals there. Rabbits, I loved the rabbits. I just loved rabbits. I had a lot of animals I liked. It was nice.
Any dogs or cats?
There were cats. There were no dogs. There were cats. I got along with the cats too. I got along very well with everybody there. It was very nice. The farm was nice.
Were there any birds like ducks or anything like that?
Ducks, yes. Ducks, they were ducks. Oh, but the ducks were just wonderful. I loved the ducks. I liked the animals so much. It was nice.
And was there ever a time with a particular duck that got hurt or something?
I think there was one duck that developed a problem with its neck. It was swollen and it got big. I tried to help it. I used to try to feed it. It wasn't eating well. I really spent a lot of time with that duck. I was very worried about that. They had dogs. I liked the dogs. It was nice there. It was very nice. It was nice. The animals were nice. The people weren't, but the animals were nice.
I want to take you back a little, just before you were with Ivan Rutkowski.
Yeah.
You were in the ghetto in Snov.
Mm-hmm.
And the end of the ghetto came with the Germans having an action, shooting people. And
Yeah.
tell me about that.
You know, I have very little memory of that, and I don't know why. I know I escaped, and I was saved, but I have no memory of it. I don't know why I don't.
I think there was a hiding place, and did the Germans come up to, did you see, were the Germans very, very close to where you were and you saw their boots or something?
I did, but I have no memory. I think I blocked it out. I have very little memory of that. I should have remembered, but I don't.
That's okay. And when you were with the Rutkowski family, what do you know about where your parents and sister were?
Well, didn't say anything to the kids. Used to come around. They were dressed in white sheets, and they told me my parents' ghosts were coming to visit me and scare me. They did it all the time.
But had they gone to join the partisans, or where did
My
they
parents, I didn't know at the time where they went. They did go to the partisans. I don't know if it was immediate or connection or what. I don't know. They told me at the time, but I have so much on my memory, I don't remember. But they were okay. They were okay, thank God.
I saw a photo that Rochelle showed me that had a photo of your mother with Menachem Begin.
Yes, that was later on. Or before, I don't know. Yes, there is, yes.
How did she know him?
She knew him, I think, from before. She knew him from before. She used to talk a lot about him. She really liked him. She knew a few people there, I think. She was very fond of them. He was a very nice man. He was really special.
And when did your family come back to get you from the Rudkovskys? What do you remember about that?
I remember my father came back. The kids started telling me, "Oh, your father's going to be coming," and this and that. And my papa came, and that was the most wonderful, wonderful day of my life. And then he took me, and I saw my mother and my sister. And I thought that was an incredible day. That was an incredible day.
Did you remember them still?
Yes, I did remember them. Yes, I did. I recognized them and I remember them. It was marvelous. It was incredible. I can't describe it. It was just wonderful. It was wonderful, wonderful feeling of finding my family again. It was unbelievable. It was wonderful. Just wonderful. I know my father had hair. I asked him what happened to his hair. He lost his hair. Yeah, in such a short time, he lost his hair. And it was the thrill of a lifetime to see my family again. Oh, God, it was so wonderful. I remember it so well. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Did you, when you were with the Rudkovskys, did you ever have any contact or any news from them, from your family?
No,
So you didn't know they were alive?
no, I did not. I had in my heart I felt they were, but I haven't seen them until we got together again. No. They would come in at night, the kids, in sheets, and tell me the ghosts of my parents. They were the ghosts of my parents and tried to scare me with the noises and everything. And of course I didn't buy it. And I knew what they were doing, and that was it.
And how did they react when your parents showed up?
They said, ooh, that parents are here, I think they didn't like it. They certainly didn't like it. Well, awful family. He was wonderful. He was a wonderful man. But the family stank. Anti-Semitic. I heard Zhidovka every second. And everything else. They used to put on sheets and come at night and to say they're the ghosts of my parents who were dead. And all kinds of stuff. I didn't, of course, buy it, but it was an awful time. They were awful people. He was wonderful. He was wonderful. The rest were horrible. And the mother was crazy. I think she was nuts. She was vicious. She was sick. I remember all I could think when I saw her was that her figure was all wrong. Things were in different places. That's all I had to think about.
Did you or your family stay in touch with Ivan Rudkovsky?
Yes.
After the war,
my
you stayed?
My father did, yeah. Actually, he made some kind of a connection with Israel with him. Yes.
That was later.
Yeah, later, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he did. Absolutely, yes.
And after you left from the Rutkovskys. Where did you go and what did you do next?
I remember I was with my parents and I stayed with them, and it was a wonderful time. It was a wonderful time.
Was this near Svish?
We were in Yesvich too, yes.
When did you start going to school?
I think my parents put me in school as soon as they could, but anti-Semitism was rampant, and I don't know when they could really do it. But I remember they did it at some point, and it wasn't fun. I remember Zhidovka was coming up pretty often.
Did you ever go back to either to Snov or to Ostrov?
I don't think I did. I don't know, Ostrov, I don't know if they could be able to, and the rest I didn't know.
So this area was back under Russian control.
Yeah.
Did you stay or did you leave?
Until my father picked me up, I stayed. But my father came and he picked me up.
And then what happened?
He took me back to my mother and my sister, and it was just wonderful, unbelievable. Because they used to play the trick all the time. They came with good sheets and telling me that's the ghosts of my parents and my family. You know, the usual. It's constant. What a cruel people. You know, he was wonderful. He was a wonderful person. He used to sometimes come back. They used to fight physically, you know, so he used to leave and come back a long time later, and he used to hug me and say, I know you're suffering. I know you're suffering. Yeah, he was a wonderful man. He really was great.
Deborah, let's take a 5-minute break.
Sure.
Okay, just as we were taking the break, Rochelle was reminding you of some of the stories.
What did she say?
Remember there was something about a cat. After you escaped from Snov,
Yeah.
there were stories about your father. You were looking for somewhere to go and you were wandering around and your father, there was something with it, put a knife to his throat and...
Oh, he tried to kill himself. Yeah, I remember.
What happened?
I don't know, we were talking and we went through a lot at that point, and suddenly he grabbed the knife and he took it to his throat. And I think I jumped on him, and I don't know whether one of us more jumped on him, took away the knife. He went there and killed himself. That was horrible.
And there was something with his tefillin.
That was another time, I think.
What was that?
I think he tried to bury the film. But I don't remember what happened after that.
And this was before you went to the Rutkovskys. You were trying to find where to go?
I don't remember exactly at what point it was with the film, but I remember that I tried to bury the film. Oh, it's hard to remember everything. It really is.
And at that time, before you'd left the ghetto because they were killing people, or they'd killed most of the Jews in the ghetto, and you were wandering around. How did you survive? Did you have to go begging, or how did you find food?
I don't recall. I guess I don't recall a lot of things. I have no recollection of that. I know my father always saw that he got some bread. He would go, I guess, and ask some people he knew. But we always had some bread.
And then there was a time when you had to choose between a big house and a little house. What was that when you came to the Rutkowski family?
There was something like that. I don't remember though what it was.
Did your father ask you which house you should go to?
I think he asked me which one. I don't remember this familiar. I just can put it together though. Something. I guess there's a lot. I don't remember.
And we were talking earlier about your cousin Shulamit.
Shulamit, yeah. She was a wonderful. She was my favorite. She was so wonderful. You know, people would come to visit her parents, and they brought her toys. As soon as they left, she came with a whole bunch of toys. I said, "Why are you giving me your toys? They're yours." She said, "Because I love you so much." Because I didn't like toys, frankly. I didn't play with dolls or the dice. I didn't like toys. But she would come with a whole bunch. I said, why'd you come? Why are you bringing me all your things? Because I love you so much. She was such a beautiful little girl. When she perished, I suffered terribly. I just couldn't get over it. I cried. She was my favorite. She was the most wonderful. She was an angel. I used to think she came from heaven because she was so wonderful, so kind. I couldn't believe she wasn't from heaven. I used to think right from heaven, I thank God that she came into me. You know. She was such a kind, beautiful child. Oh, I hated the Nazis. I still do. I don't understand people like that. I don't. I just don't.
What about the local people?
Where in?
Like in Snorv and around there. Did they get involved too?
I don't remember having problems at all. Not at all. No. I would remember if there were no problem. No. I think they were fine. It was good.
And what about, going back to Snorv again, I know it's difficult to remember, but there was a hiding place where the door was difficult to close, that some of your family members were in?
Yes. I remember there was on a string. They held a door on a string. That's all I remember.
In a house?
In a house. Yeah, I remember you had to hold it on a string because it didn't close. Yeah.
And who held it?
I think one of us, not me, didn't trust me with it. But my parents, I guess.
And could you see through the crack in the door?
You could see.
And what did you see?
Well, you saw whoever was holding it and the person holding it. That was a long time ago.
And when they did the massacre in the ghetto, did you hear anything? Did you hear what was going on?
I think I heard screaming, but I don't know whether I dreamed it or heard it. I'm not sure.
And who of your family was there at that time? Not just, I know you were with your parents and sister. Who else was there?
I recall there were friends were there. Very nice people I remember I liked. But I don't remember them too well anymore. It's a long time.
Was your Aunt Malka there?
Malka. I don't think so. I don't remember Malka being there. Maybe I'm mistaken. I don't remember Malka being there. She was wonderful.
What do you remember about her?
I remember she was just a very lovely person. She was kind. She was thoughtful. She was just an angel. I loved her. I loved Malka very much.
When you ran away from Snov, where did you shelter? Were you in the forest? Was it a forest or fields?
I remembered running towards the forest, but I don't remember anymore at all. Sorry, don't remember. It's hard to remember so many things happening at the same time.
Did anyone set their dog on you?
I think I remember a dog barking, but I just don't remember anymore. There was so much happening. I don't remember. There was a dog barking, yes. Somebody did set a dog, but I have no memory. What happened? None.
I remember reading that your father he fell asleep and he had a dream about what to do.
He fell asleep, and he did. And I don't remember anymore. I think we woke him up. And I don't remember what happened after. So much happened. I don't remember.
And were there people searching for you, coming after you to try and find you?
At what point?
After you ran away from Snov? Like Germans or local police?
I have no recollection. No.
And when would you say your childhood started?
I think when my father picked me up from Rutkovsky, I think then. That was a wonderful time. Rutkovsky was a very nice man, very nice man. The rest were awful. I don't know how he married actually money, because he married the woman who owned the farm and the animals and the whole thing. But he was a great, wonderful man, very nice. The rest stank, if you don't mind my saying it. Awful people, the rest. I heard Zhidovka for the rest of my life. Zhidovka. Pashiva Zhidovka.
Can you picture her saying that?
I think I can. You know what bothered me? You're going to think it's stupid. She had a funny figure, and things were in the wrong places. And I had nothing better to do than to figure out why they were in the wrong places. So with her talking to me and calling me names, all I stared was, why is this in the wrong place? I was little, and I guess it's stupid, but I couldn't stop.
When you were there with the Rutkovskys, did you have any encounters with Nazis? Did
No.
anyone come?
If they came, I hid, because I don't remember having a coming face to face. No, probably hid. Of course, they had to hide me because they would have been in trouble too. So they had people coming and going all the time.
Why would they have been in trouble?
Well, if they saw they hid me, I would have been in plenty of trouble. They would have been in plenty of trouble. Zhidovka.
And was there ever a time when there were collaborators like Vlasovci, people like that?
You mean with each other or with people that came?
People that came or that you knew about?
I never knew of anybody that came. They kept to themselves mostly, which is a good thing.
There was a story that somebody bouncing you up and down on their knee, like either a German or a
I think some
Vlasovets.
Germans came, You remind me. And they were supposed to tell me that they're here so I could hide, and the kids forgot. And the Germans came, and here I was with the Germans. So one of them picked me up, put me on his lap. I was blonde. He just caressed me and said I was pretty. My heart was beating so fast. Oh my God. But they told them, when the Germans come, tell her and she'll hide. They forgot. The Germans walked in on me, and there I was. So he picked me up. He said I was pretty. I was blonde. He was caressing my hair and being very nice to me. My heart was beating so fast. I remember it to this day. That was an awful moment. And he had me on the lap the whole time, and he was talking to me and caressing me and saying I was pretty. God, I remember thinking, can he hear my heart? It was beating so fast. That was a moment I can never forget. That was awful. And he said I was pretty, and I was blonde. He was caressing and caressing me. And the others were around me too, the Germans. And it was fine.
No one suspected anything?
No. I just said, I wish my heart wasn't beating so fast, because I thought the whole room heard it. Bang, 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 you know.
Did you say anything to them?
To my heart?
No, did you say anything to the Germans?
Well, whatever, they talked to me. They asked me, you know, how I was, how old I was, and different things. She asked the little girls, and I answered, and that was it. And I remember thinking, they seem so nice. How come they're not? Caressing me and saying I was pretty. The kids were supposed to tell me that the Germans came and they were playing. They forgot. So the Germans came, and here I was. So he put me on his lap. He was talking to me the whole time and caressing me. It was quite a moment. I thought my heart was beating. I thought that he would hear me. I was terrified.
Yeah.
That was awful.
When did you, I asked you this before, but when did you start school? Was it after your father picked you up?
After, yeah.
And what do you remember of the first day at school after everything that had happened?
I remember that I started school, and the kids were not very friendly, and all I remember was it was not a nice experience. They were very unfriendly. It wasn't nice.
Did you go to school for a long time there, or just a short time?
I don't remember. I think when my father picked me up, I think, he picked me up and took me with him.
And did you stay in that country, or did you leave?
I don't remember really, because we moved around so much. It's hard to remember.
Did you end up in Germany?
I don't remember. It's been so long ago.
Because I remember reading that you were in Fürstenwald.
Fürstenwald was already when this was when this community of Jewish people got together and made a place, and we were with Jewish people at the time. So I didn't really relate to anybody else. It was very nice in Fürstenwald. I loved it.
And were you able to celebrate Jewish holidays there?
I think so. I don't think it was much of a ceremony, but it was something, not much. But it's just being with people, like myself, was really wonderful. We were friends immediately, and we were close. It was wonderful. It was like a family all over again. Teachers were great too.
What do you remember about them?
I remember a couple of teachers. They were very nice, and they were especially nice to me. They would talk to me, sit down and talk to me for a very long time, all of them asking me questions. They were wonderful. It was a wonderful time. I remember it. with a lot of affection.
Was this the Tarbut school?
The Tarbut, it was. It was the Tarbut, yes. Yes, it was, you know, you're right. Yes, it was wonderful. It was really just, it was heaven, I thought. You know, everybody was so nice. We were friends with each other, the kids, and the teachers were wonderful. It was heaven. It was heaven. It was suddenly coming in from the past into such a wonderful environment.
And in Fernwald, were there Nazi DPs there? Did you ever encounter anyone like
No.
that?
No, I don't recall, no.
So there was never a time when anyone tried to attack you?
No,
or
no,
anything?
never. It was fine. Everything was wonderful then.
And how did you adjust back to kind of peacetime, to normal life?
In Fernwald,
Ah.
it was an adjustment that was immediate. It was heaven. There were teachers that were wonderful. The kids loved each other. Everything was wonderful. I felt like it was heavenly.
And were you there a long time or a short time?
I don't remember. All I know is that I loved every minute I was there. It was wonderful. The teachers were just wonderful to all of us. We were wonderful to the teachers. Everybody loved everybody. It was like being in heaven all the time that we were together.
Did you have friends?
Yes, I had friends, yes. Everybody in class was friendly with everybody. Everybody loved everybody. The kids loved everybody. It was such a wonderful time. It was, I thought, heaven.
And what language did people talk to each other in?
Well, I think then we learned Hebrew. We went into Hebrew very quickly, and that's where it stayed. It was Hebrew. And the teachers were wonderful. They were so loving and kind. They were wonderful people. We had a wonderful time. It was wonderful then in Fernwald. Wonderful.
When you were in Fernwald, did the family think about trying to get to Israel, to Palestine?
Yes. Yes. My father wanted to get to Palestine. He couldn't wait. But my mother met an American soldier, and she said to him, I have an aunt in the United States. Would you please let her know about me? And he was very nice, and he did. And then my mother did not want to go to Israel. She wanted to go with her sister. So my father was very upset, but he ended up going to my mother's sister.
And what do you know about how you came to the US? What do you remember about that?
Well, I remember I was very happy. I made friends. The teachers were great. The school was great. Everything was wonderful. I thought I was in heaven.
And where did you go initially? What city when you came to the US? Oh, actually, I should ask, do you remember the journey over from Germany?
I remember being on a big boat, and I remember a man came over, older man, and he said to me that we're all going to drown because the boat is going to collapse and we're going to be in the water, we're going to drown. I got very frightened. I walked away, and I remember I talked to other people. I asked if there was a danger, and they told me there wasn't. And I remember thinking, what a mean old man.
Why did he do that?
People are mean. Some people are just mean. They're born mean.
And was it a smooth crossing, or was it
I think
choppy?
it was a very good crossing. I loved it. I loved the trip. I loved looking at the boat. I liked the people. It was a wonderful time. It was really like a dream.
And where did you live at first in the US? What city?
We came to my aunt, and I think she got us some place to live. We lived there. It was very nice. I liked it very much.
In New York?
I think it was New York. I met some people. I liked the people. I liked the place. It was heaven.
And you went to school?
I went to school.
And did you stay in New York, or did you move on to other places?
I think I stayed as long as we could. I remember I was very happy. Everything was wonderful. The teachers were great, the kids were great. School was wonderful. It was a very nice time.
Did you live in Harrisburg at all?
I lived in Harrisburg too, yeah.
And when was that, roughly?
That was later on, I guess. Yeah, I liked it too. It was different, but it was nice. I liked it. I liked the people. I liked the language. To learn English was nice. It was nice. I was happy.
And how did your parents adjust to life in the US?
They did well. They did well. My mother was very good with languages. She went to school. She learned English. My father did well too. It was adjustable, very. It was very nice. It was nice. It was heaven.
What was their work?
My father?
Yeah.
What you mean in Falmouth?
Well, it could be also
Well,
in
he was a
Faribault.
teacher before.
Mhm.
My parents were teachers. That was their profession. And in Falmouth, I guess, I don't remember, probably adjusted to the language and whatever. But
And in US, what did he do for work?
my father, I know he was working. I just don't remember exactly. He was good. He was adjusted, yeah. He said English was not a language.
And did your parents continue to observe holidays and Judaism in the
Yes,
US?
yes,
And go
yes,
to
yes.
temple?
They did. They always did.
And how about you as you grew up?
Yes, me too. Of course, in the house it was a holiday. It was the Yom Tov, and we observed. It was wonderful.
And did you go to college?
I wanted to go to college, never made it. I think we left wherever we went before then. I wanted college. I had plans for college. It didn't work out. There was no college where we went. We were moving. And that was it, I guess.
And what about working? Did you start to work?
I worked somewhere, yeah. I just don't remember my working. I did work. I know I always worked.
Am I right in thinking you worked for the Japanese embassy?
That was later on. Yes, I did. I worked for the Japanese embassy.
How did that happen?
Japanese. I was walking, and a man stopped me and started talking to me and asked me about myself, and I told him. And then he said to me if I would want to come and work for him. And I said, what was it? He explained. And I went, and I got that job with the Japanese embassy, and I worked for them a long time. I liked it a lot.
What were you doing?
Just talking to people, and explaining and talking Japanese and translating to English. It was a lot of fun.
Wait, so how did you know Japanese?
I know, I picked it up by listening to the Japanese speaking. I liked the language. I started speaking Japanese. It was fun, it really was. I loved it, I loved that time.
Did you ever go to school to learn Japanese?
No, I didn't go to school. I don't know if anybody taught Japanese there, but I spoke it.
So you'd translate into English?
English,
for them?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It's a very nice language. It's a lot of fun, that language. It's a rich language, and it's very interesting in Japanese. The ways of them, and the way they collected flowers, and whenever a bouquet came, they said, "Oh, awful," and they redid it, to the way they thought it was perfect. And I watched it, it was very interesting. I liked the way the Japanese, everything was different. And it was an education. I loved it. I liked the language, I spoke it. It was a lot of fun. And of course I spoke it.
So at that point you were in Washington, D.C.? Or where
Where
was
the
this?
heck was I? I don't remember. I remember speaking Japanese, but where was I? I don't remember.
And did you ever get married?
Yeah, I got married. I married Paul Berner.
And how did you meet him?
He was a teacher in school, and I met him, and we got together, and we married. It was a great marriage. It was very happy. But what happened to Paul, I don't know. I think my mind just played a trick. I don't remember. I must have blocked it out somehow.
And did you have children? I know you did.
I did. Yeah, I did. I did. Yeah. Michelle?
And was she your oldest one, or youngest
No,
one?
I had another child, Zev Berner. Yeah, a son.
And how was it growing up with them, raising children?
It was very good. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful thing. Wonderful.
Do you think the experiences that you'd gone through as a child, do you think they affected the way you raised your children at all?
I never thought of it. Probably, he probably did. I remember when we were in Germany, I found this little girl. She was near a wall crying, you know. So I came over and I said, "Why are you crying?" She told me, "I lost my mother. They passed, they were killed, my father." I said, "Why don't you come with me?" I ended up bringing kids from all over to the house. And it was a wonderful experience. It was a wonderful experience. I found lots of kids everywhere. I don't have a mother, I don't have my father, they're dead. Come with me. And my parents were delighted. And my father started writing in a Jewish paper telling that there were certain children, are there any aunts or uncles, and we found family. So it was a wonderful time. It was a wonderful time. I just loved everything that was happening in those days. The kids ended up with aunts and uncles. And my father was busy. He was writing in the papers and requesting to know who knows these children. It was a profession we all had. It was a wonderful time. It was really wonderful to see these children who thought they had nobody. They had uncles and aunts and coming over. And oh my God, what a miracle. It was incredible. I used to cry. It was such an idea. My father wrote in the paper, such and such children, you know, such names. And people came and they came and uncles came and uncles. It was heavenly. It was just wonderful. The children had families. They just came. It was heavenly. My papa he thought of all those things, what to do, you know. He said, "What? I'll find them. You have uncles? I'll find them." He found them. He found uncles everywhere, or cousins. And they had families, and people got together, and they loved each other, and they were kissing, and it was heavenly. It was just wonderful. Oh, I just loved it. I just loved it. It was such a wonderful time. I didn't know my father was going to do anything like that. He just went straight to the paper, and he got uncles and aunts. He got uncles and cousins. It was wonderful. There was crying, the aunts came, and the house was full of people coming looking for cousins, and the kids were crazy, and aunts and uncles and cousins.
And when you brought them to where you were living in Fehrenwald, what did you do with them? Would you play with them, feed them? What happened?
Well, we had them living with us until they came, And the uncles came and aunts came. The house was full of people coming and kissing and loving. I was so thrilled. I used to go to the wall and cry. It was just wonderful. It was just wonderful to see what we were doing. It was amazing. I never thought of it. My father started writing in the paper, getting families together. And they came, us cousins and uncles.
I wanted to ask, within your family, when you were together with your parents and maybe your sister too, in Förenwald, and then when you came to the US, did you talk about what you had gone through in Snov and in the forests and
I don't think people were really interested.
but among yourselves, did
Among ourselves, we did. Yeah, we did. We never forgot. But yeah. It was wonderful finding families for those children. Aunts came crying, uncles came. My father just advertised in the paper, and people kept coming and coming. And I was so delighted because I had no idea he was going to do something like that. It was a great pie. It was wonderful. It was just wonderful.
Did you ever go back to any of the places, like in Europe, later on? Like, did you ever go back to Ostrov or to Snov? Did you ever want to go back?
We never did. I don't think we did. I think my father may have, but I don't think I did. Well, I guess I was small, so I wouldn't remember anyway. But my father, I know, was always looking for a family.
And something you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
you mentioned that Ivan Rudkovsky was awarded in Israel. So
Yeah, my papa saw to it. He
the
went-
Righteous Among the Nations.
Yes, my father did that for her.
What do you know about that? What happened?
My
there?
father wrote in the paper. He looked for people who would. He couldn't believe it when we did that. He just couldn't believe it. He was one very nice man. He was really a wonderful man. He used to tell me quietly, of all my children, I love you the best. He always told me. And I remember thinking, really? But the children were not something you'd like.
But you must have done something to get him awarded in Israel, the Righteous Among the Nations.
Papa never stopped. He tried every which way to get him recognized in the paper, and he never stopped. He never stopped. He did everything he could. Ivan Rudkovsky deserved it because he was such a man.
Was there a ceremony in his honor?
I really don't know whether there was because people were just so scattered. But Papa tried everything he could to get him involved, and he was. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. He was worth it. He was an incredible person. He was wonderful. He deserved the best.
And since the end of the war, did you ever receive reparations from the German government?
I don't know. My parents, I think, tried, but I don't recall. Maybe I wasn't that interested. I don't know. I remember they tried, but I don't. Maybe Rochelle. I don't know if she would either. I don't know. I would have to ask my sister.
And you said early on in the United States, people weren't really interested in hearing about the
No.
Holocaust. What would people say?
Well, you know what? I even didn't try to talk about my past. I think none of us really did because they weren't interested. I think they were not interested. Boring.
And do you remember when that changed?
Regarding the.
Well, did people, because more recently people became interested in it.
Well, I think later on people became interested. It was already written up in the papers. People looked for families. It became more lively. Yeah, later on.
in the United States, have you ever experienced anti-Semitism here?
No, I don't recall. I don't recall. No. I'm sure there was. There always anti-Semitism, but I don't recall.
And it might sound like a strange question, but why do you think you survived?
You mean why I survived the war? I guess it was God's will. I mean, I was living with the Rutkovskys. He was very nice. His wife was awful. The kids were awful. They were anti-Semitic. She was anti-Semitic. He was a wonderful man, but he would run away from her because whenever they came, they had a physical fight, he'd leave. So I was stuck with the family, and they all were the same. They were all anti-Semites, and I was a Judovka. So that's what it was.
Do you remember the other children?
Rutkovskys?
Yeah.
I remember, yeah, I have some of them, yeah.
Like boys or girls?
There were boys and girls both. There were 10 of them.
10?
He had 10 children. He had a lot of children. Yeah.
Do you remember their names?
Not anymore. I used to, but I forgot.
Am I right in thinking one of them had a nickname, Dupnitsa or Dupnik?
Dupnik, yes. That was the woman, the Ira. I think that was Ira. They called her Dupnik. The kids called her that, her sisters, brothers. It was a pretty awful name. Yeah, that's what they called her. I remember thinking at the time, why? The kids called her that.
So they were a bit mean to her too?
They were mean to each other. They fought among each other. It was something I never saw before. It was a very unfriendly family. They were not good to each other. It was cruel. It was ugly. It was an ugly. The relation, brothers and sisters, awful.
Another question. What does it mean for you, if anything, to tell your story to us today?
Well, I guess even with my parents, we spoke about that. So it went, everybody was interested in everything that was going on. My parents were. They discussed, the family of Rutkovsky and the children, and, they didn't get along. They did not get along. I found that very strange. It was an unhappy family, actually.
I want to bring it back to you
Yeah.
Today. What's your impression of, things in the world today?
Well, it's never really peaceful, There's always bad news, and that's how it goes, I guess. That's the nature of a man, I guess.
And do you have any message for people who will watch this interview in the future?
In what way?
Well, any sort of thoughts that you'd like to tell people in the future?
Well, I'd like to think that I was talking to a very, very intelligent man, a very understanding, and I like to talk to him and tell him about my life, and I was very pleased that I had the pleasure.
The pleasure's all ours.
It's wonderful.
And any last thoughts before we finish this part of the interview?
In what way?
Anything you haven't said yet that you want to say?
Well, I think it was a pleasure to meet you, and I'm very pleased that I had that opportunity, and I'll always remember this meeting. It was very, very important to me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My right arm. So, Deborah, tell me, who is this who's sitting alongside you?
That is my little Dutch guy. What happened? Something fell? What happened?
That was a microphone
What,
dropping.
that was the microphone.
It's okay.
Oh,
All right.
So, you were saying, who is this next to?
that's my
next to you?
daughter, Rochelle Brenner,
Hello.
Karolchuk.
Yes.
And I'd like to say thank you for Rochelle for helping arrange this interview today and all the work you've done to help make this happen.
Oh, I'm very proud of my mother. I think you are amazing because everything that I prepared is really everything she gave me. So I was just a messenger. So every piece of information, whether it was covered or not, was everything over the years that you provided to me. And I think you were absolutely amazing. I'm very proud of her, my mom.
That you're very lovely. Thank you.
And how long have you been hearing stories about?
Well, you know, it's interesting because, as I may have mentioned to you when we spoke earlier, a lot of Holocaust survivors in the initial years were really very reticent to talk about it. They were embarrassed. And so for many years, I told my friends my mother was American, never discuss the Holocaust. And it was only till later years when it started coming out, I think with Steven Spielberg and other things, when the agencies were coming into, into terms with the survivors and the hidden children, and then it became a thing. And slowly, she became less reticent to talk about it. But the stories, we always heard the stories, but they were more for just us, never to be repeated outside the family. But I think the stories were just, over the years, I just kind of remember some of them really stood out, and especially when it came to family members that she was very close with, like her cousins especially.
And what has it meant for you today to have your mother give her testimony?
I think it's amazing because this is something we spoke about for years and years, and we tried to do it. At some point when she was open to it, there was difficulty in getting, agencies to do the recordings, funding and financing. And so we did the United States Holocaust Museum. She did an interview there, a little bit here, a little there, and her story was out there. But there's so much information, as you know, how many hours I spent trying to just keep adding and adding. It's almost like I was just regurgitating everything out because it was so much. And there's a lot I didn't probably add, but over the years, there's so much that she's done that, it's just amazing. So I'm just, like I said, the messenger, the vessel for her, but I am extremely proud of you. Like I said, if it was me in her shoes, I probably wouldn't have lasted a day, because I certainly wouldn't have been able to be as courageous as she was in all the instances that she had to be.
And Deborah, what is it like for you having a daughter who's so interested in?
She's fantastic. I couldn't dream of a better daughter. She is amazing. She's a wonderful, wonderful person.
I'll pay
She's
you
very
later.
intelligent. She's bright. She has a sense of humor. She's all the good things, all the package.
Well, I must have inherited from somebody, so I must have somebody in my family who I inherited from. But like I said, her story is very unique because everybody has their story unique in the Holocaust. But I think with her special because she was little and she was separated. A lot of kids were. Some of them were in orphanages and they had other people around who were maybe good. She had to always think on her feet. She was always, every day was danger. Every day she could wake up could be her last day. And she had all these near misses where she could have easily, the wrong decision, the wrong look. If she didn't smile when she didn't want to, when she saw a Nazi and she smiled and he stopped and then moved on, things like that, that's all instinctual for a little girl at the age of 4 to be able to respond, I think is amazing. So I think the fact that she had her wits about her at such a young age, that she was able to survive really under such dire circumstances was really a really big testimony as to what she's like as a person.
Are there particular stories, like one or two sort of particular stories that have really kind of sat in your memory and resonated with you in some way?
I think there's so many, but I think the closest to her family because, I think the biggest things when I was doing the review and getting all the information out and kind of going over in my head all the stories and reviewing with her, the days leading up into the massacre and then beyond. And I think, for example, like her cousin, her favorite cousin, Shalamitz, she may have spoken to her about her, was a little girl, maybe a year younger than her, which is a huge difference when it comes to age, which made a difference between life and death for that family, because she ended up crying when they were hiding and then got caught. The rest is unfortunate at that point. But she was so close to my mom that she'd give her all her toys and gifts, and they were such a close relationship that to this day, my mother remembers her as if she was just like it was yesterday. She remembers her Aunt Malka, who we have named, 2 children are named after both Shulamit and Malka. So it's just a testimony again to the love she had for her family that at such a young age it carried her whole life. You know, of course, her parents that she's close with, and I think the survival, the family as a whole, the running, getting to Rutkowski, being able to, even pick the house that you mentioned, which there were 2 houses, and her father said to her when they were running, they got exhausted. He said, "Pick one. There's a beautiful house, a mansion and a shack shanty at the back." And you would think a little kid would pick the big shiny mansion. She picked the shack. And why is that significant is because there was a family, obviously landowners, who had this land, the Rutkowskis, actually the wife, he was impoverished, the husband, and 2 sisters. So Rutkowski's wife, where she stayed, and then Rutkowski's sister, she was married to a Nazi. Had my mom knocked on that, or her parents knocked on that door, they would have been greeted by a Nazi. Would have been a very, unfortunately, different ending, possibly. But she went to the house with Rutkowski, who happened to know my grandfather, because they were teachers together, so there was a commonality of interest. But had chosen the wrong door, it could have been a totally different.
Do you remember that, Deborah? The 2
Vaguely.
houses?
She sometimes reminds me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you said that you picked the ugly one, but it had a big
Yeah.
orchard, lots of fields and
Yes.
flower and fruit and vegetables and farms.
Is that what helped you make the decision, or what do you think? Because it was a very good decision.
It was a decision. I don't remember what.
I think it's
prompted me.
instinct. I think there's a lot of
Maybe.
instinct and intuition, because I don't know if she also mentioned stories that almost would border on more like the afterlife thing. But my grandfather was, they were running after they got, they were running in circles basically after the massacre, and they were tired, they were hungry and thirsty, and they were worn. And my grandfather was caught by a dog, who then had his owner came with a bayonet, searched my grandfather, found his tefillin, which is his phylacteries, I guess, Jewish artifact, and he knew that obviously they were Jewish. And he said, I'm going to give you water. Wait, I'll bring you some bread and other food. Just hang out here for a bit. And my grandfather just got so tired, he almost fell into a deep slumber next to a tree, and then he got up suddenly and said, "We must leave from here." And later on, he explained what, and they didn't ask. And then moments later, they heard shots, which meant that the man, instead of getting food, went to get the cops, came back, and there was nobody there, and they shot maybe in frustration. But later on, my grandfather said that he lay his head down, and he had this deep slumber, which maybe took seconds, but a man came to him in the garb of the dead. It's called tarchichim in Hebrew. And he said, it was a man with a beard who said just 2 words or 3 words, "You must go at once." And didn't say what and where. And my grandfather spent his whole life trying to recognize this man. He said, "I know this man, but I don't know from where." And I said to my mom, that really wouldn't make sense. You either know your family or you don't. Because I know everybody in my family, and if I don't recognize them, I don't know them. But I think it was somebody who came to him not to scare him, because if it's a stranger, he wouldn't know. And if it's somebody like a family member who's dead, it would be more frightening. It was something familiar, but yet enough to warn him to leave the area. So they had a lot of these kind of situations come up. So my grandfather was very intuitive. She's very intuitive. My aunt, very intuitive. So I think in some ways she worked on those intuitions, which worked for her many times over and over again, including the time when you had a shootout that they had at Rutkowski's when you were able to escape. So yeah, she had a lot of.
Do you remember those feelings, those intuitions?
Sometimes, yeah.
What can you say about them?
I don't know. It's very interesting because it happens and you believe it and you see it, and then later on you think about it, but it's there. Yeah.
Well, even your great-grandfather is interesting, because so basically her family in Snov, it was her immediate family, and she had her father's parents, Firma and Meir, and then she had her uncle Itcha, his wife Chaya, and the 2 children, Shlomo and Shulamit. Now they were able to secure a very good hiding place. Unfortunately for my grandfather, they couldn't fit everybody, and my grandfather had this little room with a door with a large gap and a string that they held together. That's kind of where they were at. But my great grandfather said to my grandfather, said, of all the people who's going to survive the war, you're going to be the one to survive. Now, how would he have known that? But he did. He said that, and it was true. So there is a premonition that probably it's something inherited. I don't think I have that, but I mean, it's a good and bad. It's a double-edged sword because sometimes you see things you don't want to see, and it's frightening, and sometimes it can help you. But you know, sometimes you find it more of a curse than a gift. But in the times during the war, it's all you can work on is intuition, and I think that was very helpful for her. You know, and so that's where she is. That's why I'm here today.
Rochelle, I wanted to also ask you, how was it for you growing up with? Was your father also a Holocaust
My
survivor?
father was born in Brooklyn.
That's right, you
Born and
told me.
raised.
But having a Holocaust survivor mother and then grandparents, do you think it affected the course of your life in any way, or how you felt about the world?
I think from a young age there's a certain sensitivity because you're singled out. I mean, the Holocaust, when I was little, I didn't understand the depth of it. I mean, Hitler was, you hear the name Hitler, but you don't really understand until you get older. But I think what you do know is you're different. I mean, being Jewish, we lived in a Jewish community, so I was surrounded by Jewish people. I wasn't in, let's say, in an area, let's say Europe, where you see a dichotomy between Jews and non-Jews. It was pretty much a very nice, close-knit community, so I didn't have that kind of ostracization. But you feel there's something there. Maybe it's something that's subtle. It's really subliminal, but you feel a bit of something like different, you know. And I think it makes you more sensitive to the world around you. And I think even once I got older and I went to school and I went to college and I was exposed to more Gentiles in the world, you're very sensitive to the anti-Semitism. And I think that may be more hypersensitive because of that.
And any before we move to the photographs, any last sort of words or thoughts you'd like to say?
I mean, there's so much. I mean, I just think, like I said, I marvel at her strength, you know, and her wisdom. You know, for a little girl, like I said, the cousin that was 1 year difference is a huge. But being at the age of 4, it's still a huge responsibility. And the fact that she was also by herself, because it's, again, like I mentioned earlier, people were in orphanages and she was mistreated, so she was really not just abandoned, if she will, but she never held her parents responsible. She never had the bad feelings that I know other people have against their parents who had no choice, really, but to leave them. You know, and did you get into discussion how your father didn't recognize you? Did you have that
No.
discussion? No. Oh, that was would you like to go over that?
If you like.
Well, it's your
No,
story.
you don't. I
No,
don't
I'll set
you
you off.
remember it better.
Well, it was just,
You remember it better.
well, you were telling Crispin that the children were always taunting her. They were very cruel. So they used to come, you know, into her. She was like in a very small area with a little thin sheet to cover herself, and they used to come and taunt her at night with sheets and say that they're the ghosts of the dead parents. Although she always told me later on, she always knew in her heart of hearts her parents were still alive. So you see, that is again part of the intuition. But still, it's very daunting for a little kid to hear, you know, the sound of ghosts at night when it was frightening enough as it was. So when my grandfather, he was serving the partisans, you know, the war ended obviously in 1945, but in 1944 the Russians were already winning, and the Nazis were already they were moving back. So he could not wait any longer, and I believe the partisans may have even disbanded earlier than the war ended. And he said he's going to come pick up his daughter. So he came one day to pick up Deborah. And I think that what my mother says, they told her, your father's here. And she's like, yeah, right. Yeah, because she was so used to
They
hearing
played
it.
that trick so
Right.
many times.
So she comes out and she sees what this man, worn, tired looking, wearing a Russian uniform, bald. And he says, you know, I'm your father. And she says, no, you're not my father. What did you say? You said my father was what?
Good looking, well dressed.
And he had hair. Because my grandfather lost his hair, I guess,
That
during
was
the war.
true.
So, but my grandfather had another problem of his own. And the problem he had, he didn't recognize her either, because the phenomenon of changing eye color was something usually young babies do. But she changed. She was 4 or so when she was left by Witkowski, and then maybe close to 7 when he picked her up. So her eyes turned from blue to green, which is something he probably was not aware of could happen. Her hair was already shaved and maybe grew out differently. She was skinny. She didn't understand the word Yiddish because he spoke to her in Yiddish. She didn't remember that. So he thought, he was convinced that they do a lot of things. They would switch to children. In other words, if Jewish families would come and say, here, take my child and hide it, and they'd pay them. They'd say, sure. As soon as they left, they gave him up to the Nazis, figured they'd never come back. But there were a couple cases where they did. Now, being that my grandfather was a partisan, the partisan said to him, if you go get your daughter, and she's not your daughter, you let us know. We're going to go back with them, torch the whole house down with everybody in it. But they got a bug in his ear thinking that they're going to swap. So he was convinced that she was a swap, an imposter, and she thought her father was somebody different. So they were both walking heavy-hearted away from the Rutkovskys, and, you know, they were miserable. But so he was trying to ask her questions, and she was trying to like let him know. So she said, "How is Celia," which is her sister, and and she mentioned purity candles. You remember the Hanukkah candles he spoke about? And he was so like in his mind so convinced he felt they probably fed this lie, which really in truth they would know about Hanukkah because they were ignorant. But at that point he was already convinced that she wasn't his. And she, at some point when she was talking to him, she finally recognized his voice. So what happened? What did you do when you realized that was your father? What did you do?
What I always do.
She does this little gesture. She was so excited. She stopped walking and she hugged herself. She went, My grandfather stopped, took a look and said, that's it. But nobody does that but my daughter. So he said his heart, the weight lifted off of him. So at that point, by the time they really got to where they needed to be, which was at that point in the Eskridge they were going to, they both knew, you know, who they were, and it was a very wonderful story. So I think that's a very lovely, pivotal story because, you know what, it could have ended in some tragedy even after the war. But basically, and then my grandmother heard that her husband and daughter were coming from the townsfolk. So she ran to pick you up, dirty as you were, because you walked, you didn't want to be carried, you was barefoot and whatever. They picked you up and she kissed you head to toe. They see a mother always recognizes a daughter. There was no question in her mind, and then the rest is history. So that was that. So at least the worst was over. But, you know, there was a lot of danger even until she came to the U.S. There's a lot of different stories and escapes, you know, leaving Russia, going to the West. You know, my grandfather was a decorated NKVD, which is a KGB today, an officer. He had gold medals. We heard that he had to bury them because if he's caught with, you know, trying to be Greek with the gold medals from Russia, you know. So there were lots of funny stories of how they ended up, you know, trying to be different people. You were Greek. Your father, my grandfather had a beret actually, with a pipe that he actually bartered with somebody, put it on his head, and said he was Greek, spoke Hebrew. And then somebody said, "Oh, we have a Greek soldier. Let's bring him on." Brings him on. It's like, "Uh-oh, we're goners now." So they start speaking. My grandfather speaking in Hebrew, and the guy is speaking in Greek. But he was smart enough to say, "Yes, it's Greek, but it's a different dialect I don't get. But it's definitely Greek." And they let him go. So there are so many different, sometimes humorous stories, sometimes not so much. You know, did you ever tell the story about the Kaddish? The one, did you get to that?
No, I don't think I got to it.
Well, this is one, I'll give you just one last story because that's also something, a little humor in the face of all kinds of danger. Because danger was still ongoing after the war. Being caught by the Russians and sent to Siberia would have been as bad in its own way. So they were escaping, and your parents told you don't speak because at that point you only knew Russian. So they said don't speak. You know, hand language, signs, tug if you want something like a drink. So they went from car to car running. They were just catching trains, just trying to get westward. They didn't know where they were going. They were always on the run. Ended up in the car. At some point there were some Jews on the car as well, and there was some smart aleck on the car. And they knew he was going to be trouble, but, you know, they left him alone. So at that one point, there was a bunch of Russian soldiers came on, one very highly decorated one. I don't know if he was a general or whatever title, but he was very highly decorated with medals.
Yeah.
And he starts speaking to the group, and everyone's like, you know, I don't know, either humming or saying something. And this smart guy comes up to him in front of his face and starts reciting the mourner's Kaddish, which is the prayer for the dead. And he says it from top to bottom. It's in Hebrew and Aramaic. And the guy goes, aha, right? That's what he did.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh my God, this is going to be trouble ahead. So everybody got off the train. I mean, the soldiers and his minions, and he got off, and they waited. They knew the train wasn't leaving. They waited and waited. Then what happened? The guy gets out on the train alone.
Yeah.
He says to the young man, he says, "You come over here." Do you remember what he said to him?
Was redst du? Du sagst die Kaddish noch mehr. geloof dat nog.
So he said, why are you saying the mourner's prayer? In Yiddish to the man, why are you saying, which means he was Jewish, which was already a shock, because well, there are a lot of Jews that were fighting with the partisans and the Russians, like my grandfather. Why are you saying the prayer? I'm still living. The guy was shaking in his boots, because he's like, oh my God, now I'm in different trouble. But what did the guy said? He said, what did he said to him? Be sei klug.
Sei klug sei nicht zu klug.
See, so he gave him a lesson. He said,
Yeah.
be smart, but don't
Yes,
be too
yeah,
smart. And then
yeah.
he said to the Jews on the train, he
Yeah.
said,
Fortgesundlich.
like, go Jews, be well, travel safe. So that was also, 'cause otherwise that would have been
Yeah,
another, you know,
yeah.
so there were so many humorous stories, fun
Yeah.
stories, but these are ones that you asked about my memories that stand out on my mind. These are the highlights, you know, and like I said, until you literally were able to leave Germany, I mean, there was always
Yes.
something, but your best times were Fahrenwald.
Fahrenwald,
the DP
yeah.
camp.
Yeah, that came
Yeah,
through.
yeah, that was that
Yeah.
was when she shone, and you were sledding a lot. She talked about her sled.
No, but
Okay, all right. She had fun there. But at any rate, that was a nice end to a really horrible childhood.
or a nice beginning to.
Well, nice end to a trauma and a beginning of a new life that was going to be better, which ultimately it was. But you know, considering the kind of trauma, and I've met people survivors her age who are miserable, who have problems with the parents, who really have very deep-rooted problems. She's a very happy-go-lucky person. If there's any kind of trauma, it certainly didn't show through. And I think because she has the resilience and the strength, and she really bounced back. And that's why I think you are the most amazing person. I'm glad I picked you as my mother.
Isn't she wonderful?
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Let's take a short break and do some
Sure.
photographs.
Yes, thank
Yes.
you. And
Yeah. Deborah, please tell us who is in this photograph.
Okay. That's my uncle. He's a doctor. My mother. My grandfather. My grandmother. My Aunt Sarah. Did I miss anyone? I can't see who that is. That I cannot see. Who's that? I think that's my Aunt Sarah.
That's Chaman,
That's Chomer, Chomer, and that's Ita.
right? And then the middle is
The middle is, who's that? Malka, yeah, okay.
So is this your mother's side of the family?
My mother's, yeah.
And what would the last name have been of them?
Friedman,
Friedman. And was this Uncle Joseph?
that's Uncle Joseph.
The one you
He's a
talked about, the doctor?
Yes, doctor, yeah.
He's actually wearing a school uniform. I'm interjecting because that uniform is a doctor uniform. That's from the school. The hat, that was his actual uniform at the time.
And do you have, you know, roughly, very, very roughly, do you know when this photo would have been taken?
Oh, I don't know what year, 1930s, I guess.
No, probably. Bobby's around 15 here, you'd
Oh,
say.
she's 15?
So probably like
She's 15, then she
1920 maybe.
maybe,
Maybe.
1920.
20s?
Or
Okay.
1920, because yeah, she was born in 1895. So
Uh-huh.
figure,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, so the 1910s, maybe into 19. Okay,
something like that, yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Please tell us who is in this photo.
Well, this is my mother, Leona Friedman, and my father, Manja Friedman. Menachem.
And when would it have been taken, roughly?
Oh, I don't know what year.
This is their wedding picture, so probably around late 1920s, 1928, 29. Yeah,
1928.
that's Menachem Korolchuk.
Menachem, yeah.
Thank you. And who is in this photo?
My uncle Joseph, my cousin, I think, yes,
I think it's Yehoshua.
Yeshua, yes. My Aunt Malke.
Rosa, that's Rosa,
Oh, that's Rosa,
wife.
and that's Lalek.
right? Which means
My-
doll,
Yeah,
actually, because
it
he
Oh.
looks
does
like a
mean-
doll.
it
And
does
what was the
mean-
last name?
Friedman.
Friedman. So on the mother's side.
Uh-huh.
And roughly before the war, when was this taken?
This would be definitely before the war,
Mhm.
yeah, but
Uh-huh.
probably not Yeah, because when she was playing with them, they were probably a little bit older than that. They're older than her. So, and that's and Eliezer was his name, the youngest one. His nickname was Lalek, the dog,
Lalek.
but his name Eliezer.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. And who's in this photograph, Deborah?
Maya Malke,
And what was her last name?
Frieden.
And she was
She was my aunt,
mother's sister?
my mother's sister, yes.
And was she older or younger?
She was
Younger.
younger, yeah. Younger than
And
yeah.
when you see this photo of her, does it bring back any memories?
In snow.
Snuff?
When she gave you strawberries.
Oh, she did, I don't remember. Okay.
She told you she loved you very much.
Yes, she did.
It's her favorite aunt, actually.
Yeah. Malke.
And you know, was this before the war that this was taken?
Yes, it was before the war.
Probably.
Thank you. And who's in this photograph?
That's me.
And do you remember this?
Yes, I think it was taken
You came here.
yeah, when I came here, yes. 1947.
In New York? Or
New York,
In New
yeah.
York. Thank you very much. And tell us about this picture.
This is a picture of me in Ostrov Mazovets holding a doll. Actually, I didn't like dolls, but for the picture. And that's me. That's in the garden in Poland.
And you remember that garden?
I remember the garden. It was full of roses and flowers. It was a beautiful garden, my favorite place. I used to hide in it and fall asleep. And my father would find me sleeping in the garden. It was a beautiful garden.
Thank you. And who's in this photo?
My sister Zilla, and that's me and a friend of mine.
Who's in the middle?
That's my sister.
The big one.
The big one is my sister. She's my sister,
Celia.
Zilla.
And where would this have been taken?
Where was
In
this?
Fairwell.
Falmouth, yeah. That was in Falmouth.
There's a little history to this picture. My mother used to pick up orphans every time she, because she was so full of heart. And when the DP camp started growing, as more people started coming after the war, there were a lot of refugees, there were orphans and families that were missing, family members. So she would find these orphans crying, and she found this one who's named Celia, also like her sister, and she brought her home, and she made herself very comfortable in the family to the point where my mother would have a nightmare and want to go into her father's bed. She found this one in the bed instead. So I think that was one of the cases where you were happy to have her move on. But
true.
yeah,
Yeah.
so she was too comfortable.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And tell us about this picture here.
This is in Falmouth, and this is the people. This is a teacher, a couple of teachers, principal, another teacher, and that's me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And this was in the Tarbut school, or?
Tarbert, yeah.
Talbot, yeah. Yeah, these are some of my friends. My teacher, I love this teacher.
You were having a party. It looked like you're drinking. It looks like a party.
I don't know if it was a party or just a picture. I
Well, they
can't
have your drinks there, and it looks like
There are
there's
drinks
food.
there?
Yeah, I think some kind of celebration.
I just don't remember then.
There was a little girl there. She said they used to look alike. There's a little girl in the front. The one,
Her, not her.
not her.
Oh,
That one.
her, yes. People used to mistake me for her.
Yeah, she's very cute.
Yeah, she's cute.
And they
Yeah.
both had ribbons, I think, in the hair. So
And this one.
yeah.
Thank you. Deborah, tell us about this picture. Who's in it? And
Well, this is pictures me and a friend of mine. She is from Falmouth too. And
it's okay. We can keep going.
yeah, what?
Can you put the picture back
Yeah,
so we can see it?
Yeah, because
Thank you.
otherwise it's not going to be history, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
And what was her name, the friend?
Her name was Peggy Faggy.
Yeah.
Faggy, yeah.
And what do you remember? What did you used to do with her?
We used to go sledding. I remember
Huh.
mountain climbing. She did that. I did on my own. Yeah, in the mountains. Yeah,
You love your sledding. That was your favorite
Yeah.
highlight of being in Faribault
Yeah.
with the snow.
yeah.
You would run out every day. You couldn't even wait to finish your homework to go on that sled. And didn't you once dislocate your shoulder because you were flying so high you
Yes.
dislocated it?
Yes,
Yeah.
I did.
And your mother saw you one day. You told me she saw you and she almost had a heart attack because you were flying in the air. She just saw you like whiz on by, but she didn't say anything to you.
Yeah.
But she said her heart almost fell because you were just flying. This was her adrenaline speed.
Thank you. Deborah, tell us about who are the two people in this photo?
It's me and my sister Zilla. She's my older sister. And that's her in the picture.
And where were you when this was taken? Was this already in the US?
I don't
Yeah.
think there was,
course.
was that in the US?
Yeah,
I
you
don't
already-
remember.
You're already
Yeah.
working, remember?
Oh, I
You
was
were
working
yeah,
already.
so-
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you were already in.
Yeah.
How old would you be in this picture? Probably about like 16 maybe? Something like that?
Could be.
So you already, because you came here at the age of almost 10.
Uh-huh.
So this is a
Yeah.
lot.
Thank you. Actually, hold on a sec. And Deborah, try not to move. And tell us about this photo. Who's in there?
I can't see.
No, leave it there.
Okay, I can't see.
Okay, this is Yvonne, right?
This is Ivan, I
Right.
think.
Yes.
What
Yeah.
was his last name?
Witkowski.
His daughter, remember her? The older daughter?
That's what's her name?
Ira?
Eva, yeah.
Right. I guess the other two are his older sons who were served in the army.
Yeah, I guess,
And
yeah.
that's the younger son, and that may be that one they call Dupnik, possibly?
Possibly.
Okay.
And was this would have been taken after the war, obviously, probably, right? Or
It's probably around the wartime. It looks like one of them is in uniform, so he may still have been serving, but he looks a little older. It could have been taken maybe after.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you. And what is showing here? What is
Ivan Witkowski is here.
and alongside it, this is his award of the recognition from Yad Vashem. Is that right?
I think so, yes.
And what does this man mean to you when you think about him?
Well, he saved my life. He was a very nice man, I thought. Yeah,
Not only your life, he saved your parents' life too,
my
because
parents
he
too, yeah.
pushed them towards the partisans. He was
Yes,
able to hook them up,
that's correct. So he told
So-
them about the partisans, yes.
help them.
He helped them come to the
Connect.
partisans, yes.
Thank you.